Welcome to Travel Comics. This channel will go over different comic series from start to finish. Our first series will be The Amazing Spider-Man, starting with Amazing Fantasy number 15. Let's get started. So a bit about Amazing Fantasy 15. So this is the introduction of Spider-Man, and Stan Lee actually designed Spider-Man by seeing a fly. He realized that it'd be a cool power for a superhero to have, to be able to stick to walls. However, he changed it from a fly to Spider-Man. He made him a teenager, which was influenced by the fact that there weren't many teenage superheroes back then. And to be honest, in the interview that I read, it said that he couldn't really recall any. He also gave him personal problems to make him relatable. The publisher said that everyone hates spiders, so he can't really name him Spider-Man. It's not going to appeal to people. However, we know how that turned out today. He mentioned how teenagers can be sidekicks, but not superheroes. And above all, superheroes can't have their own personal problems. They're the ones who solve the problems. However, Stan Lee managed to sneak Spider-Man into Amazing Fantasy's last issue. So starting off with Amazing Fantasy, you could already see on the cover that Spider-Man is mentioning how people mock Peter Parker. However, Spider-Man will never be mocked. It's showing a bit of ignorance almost, rather than the Spider-Man that we know today. It shows him in his original, red and blue suits with the black webbing and the black webbing wings as well. It starts off with Peter Parker being called a bookworm, professional wallflower, not knowing how to distinguish different dances. There's other students making fun of him. However, there's a cool image of him standing, being mocked and ashamed, but you can see Spider-Man's shadow in the background. It's a really cool image. So we are shown Uncle Ben and Aunt May. They are introduced for the first time ever, and they are shown being loving to Peter, seeing him in these high regards. However, we cut to him being in school, or being rejected by a girl for Flash Thompson, which is the first time he's ever introduced. However, this is his only appearance in this issue. So after that, he's shown being vengeful towards the other teens, saying how someday they'll be sorry, and pretty much showing the ignorance, the vengefulness of Peter Parker at this time. Now, it shows him walking towards a science exhibit, and specifically you can see on the sign that it says experiments with radioactivity, kind of foreshadowing the bite that we will see. So they are observing a radioactive ray, and you can see a little spider coming out. The spider ends up being caught in the middle of the ray, and it's in shock, so it finds the nearest person, which is Peter Parker, and it ends up biting him. Peter feels dizzy, the bite is burning. He sees that the spider's glowing, so he actually runs outside to get some fresh air. However, as he's outside, he doesn't notice that there is a car coming towards him, and he actually leaps out of the way. He jumps pretty far, and he does it without even realizing it. So this is his spider sense actually saving his life. You could see him starting to climb walls. However, he is seen by a little boy, tells his mom. However, the mom says that it's just because of the horror movies, which is a funny little scene. So this boy actually sees Peter Parker before Spider-Man. So once he gets up on the roof of the building, he crushes a steel pipe as if it were paper. He then climbs down through a thin cable pretty easily, showing that he has this balance and this super strength. He sees a sign that anyone who can last in the ring with Crusher Hogan for at least 3 minutes will get paid $100. So he runs home all excited, knowing that he can last. He has all these powers. He does mention, though, he doesn't want to be embarrassed if he fails. He needs a disguise. Real quick, he puts together this little weird, it's a white shirt, jeans, boots, and some mesh mask. He easily beats Crusher Hogan. Pretty much has him begging to end the match. And you could see that this man with a cigar actually takes notice. So the guy is revealed to be a TV producer. He gives Peter a card, tells him to stay in contact, mentions how the mask is a hit, so he should keep the mask. He mentions the Ed Sullivan Show. At the moment, Peter thinks he's great. He sees that he has a lot to offer. So after this, we actually cut to a scene where Peter Parker is back in his room, and his Uncle Ben and Aunt May walk into the room. They mention how he looks tired, and they give him a snack. Pete then makes his web shooters and the fluid. He makes a suit resembling a spider. It's thin enough to where he could wear it under his clothes. He calls himself Spider-Man for the first time. This is where the Spider-Man name is coined. He mentions how people laughed at him for being a bookworm. However, only a science major could really design what he designed, showing how he's still pretty vengeful, pretty self-centered, ignorant type. But again, this is a different Peter Parker than what we know today. So we then cut to part 2 of the comic. So Spider-Man actually goes on to the TV show, where he shows off his powers, and he, after a little bit, the producer yells at him, "Hey, Spider-Man, you need to stop. You can't be showing all your powers. You have to leave the audience hungry for more." At the end, you could see that he's being asked for pictures by Life magazine. He's asked to be in movies. He's asked for an interview. However, he tells him not to speak to his agent, again showing that ignorance. So we then cut to a lobby where a cop is chasing a robber. He yells at Spider-Man to stop the robber because once he gets to the elevator, he'll get away. However, Spider-Man tells the cop, that's not his job. That's not my job. You do it. He's not going to be pushed around anymore. So we cut to a scene where he is home, and he is actually given a present from his Uncle Ben and Aunt May, which is a microscope that he's been wanting for a while, showing, how they really do love him, and Peter does cherish them a lot. Then we cut to a couple days later. Spider-Man is seen as a national sensation. You could see a bunch of newspapers talking about him. However, one night when he's coming home, he sees a cop car in front of his house, and the cop tells him that a burglar broke in and shot Uncle Ben and killed him. He is then told that this burglar is cornered in this abandoned warehouse, the old Acme warehouse. Peter goes into his room running, and he dresses as Spider-Man to go get him. So we see Spider-Man mentions that the warehouse is on the other side of town. However, with his webbing, he'll be able to get there pretty fast. So we cut to the warehouse where the cops are mentioning how they can't just charge in. They'll be picked off one by one. The burglar will kill them all basically if they try to break in. We could see the burglar planning to leave and escape once it turns nighttime, to where he'll just slip away. Spider-Man appears right behind the burglar, and you can see the burglar, he's pretty afraid. So Spider-Man webs away the burglar's gun, punches him, noticing that it's the burglar from the last night. It's kind of funny because he's wearing the exact same outfit. However, he's wearing a hat this time. So I guess the guy didn't change or something. But anyways, so the cops, that you can see that they're ready to burst in now. However, one of them mentions how the burglar is actually webbed up on a ceiling, on a raft or something. And we then cut back to Spider-Man, sort of just pondering about how he could have stopped Uncle Ben's death if only he stopped this burglar before. You can see him walking away into the city. Stanley actually coins a famous phrase right here: with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Great introduction. It's the introduction we all know for Peter Parker, Amazing Fantasy number 15. Amazing Fantasy was actually a comic series, so a collection of a bunch of short stories, which only consisted of 3 to 5 pages. So Spider-Man, it's broken up into part 1 and part 2, because each one is about 3 to 5 pages. Stanley mentions how Spider-Man will appear in the next Amazing Fantasy. However, we all know that Amazing Fantasy was actually canceled. He ended up having his own standalone series. So something crazy about this comic is that it's only 12 cents, which is only about $1.50 in today's money. So they were pretty cheap back then, these comics. And the only real characters we see introduced are Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Uncle Ben, Aunt May, Flash Thompson, Crusher Hogan, and the burglar. The burglars being the main antagonist, and Spider-Man being the main protagonist, obviously, of course. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this one. Amazing Fantasy number 15. But yeah, next week we will do Amazing Spider-Man number 1. And we will do 1 a week. Amazing Spider-Man number 2, number 3, so on. Until we finish the series or, get caught up with today. Hopefully soon we could maybe do 2 a week or do 2 different series a week. Spider-Man and X superhero. But comment what superhero you would like, subscribe, hit the little bell. That way you could be notified when I do upload the video, which again is going to be weekly for now. But thank you guys, and see you next week.